Is it possible that the nicest person in your orbit, the one celebrated for their kindness, is also the unseen hand subtly shaping your decisions and leaving you with a quiet hum of unease? Indeed, this very niceness, that universally lauded virtue, can sometimes be a meticulously crafted disguise for a very quiet, very effective form of control. The unsettling reality is that some of the most powerful manipulation doesn't come from overt aggression, but from a gentle presence that steers you with soft words and apparent selflessness, all while expertly leveraging unspoken obligations and a carefully cultivated sense of guilt. Unmasking this pattern is not about becoming cynical, but about developing the crucial discernment needed to protect your autonomy and ensure your relationships are genuinely supportive, not subtly coercive. Nice but controlling, the soft guilt trip pattern, written and published by Stealth Psychology. Chapter 1. The Mask of Niceness. Have you ever been in a situation where someone's overwhelming kindness, their constant offers of help, or their seemingly selfless gestures left you feeling not grateful, but strangely uneasy, obligated, or even a little suffocated? Imagine receiving a gift of assistance that you didn't quite ask for, delivered with such sweetness and apparent generosity that refusing it, or even questioning it, would make you feel like an ungrateful brute. This subtle yet powerful dynamic, where niceness becomes a tool for something other than pure altruism, is often the first layer of a complex control pattern. The problem is that genuine kindness is something we all value and appreciate, making it incredibly difficult to suspect or scrutinize behaviors that are presented under its guise. When someone is consistently nice, offers unsolicited help, or appears to make sacrifices for us, our natural inclination is to trust them, to appreciate them, and to want to reciprocate. However, when this niceness is a calculated facade, it can create a confusing and disorienting experience, where our intuition whispers that something is amiss, yet our logical mind struggles to find fault with behavior that appears so benevolent. This leaves us vulnerable to being subtly managed, our choices influenced, and our own needs quietly sidelined, all under the warm glow of perceived kindness. The transformative solution lies in learning to look beyond the surface presentation of niceness and to cultivate an awareness of the underlying intent and the actual emotional impact of these behaviors on us. It's about understanding that true kindness empowers and respects autonomy, while niceness deployed as a manipulative tactic often creates obligation, dependence, or a subtle erosion of self-confidence. The core idea is that we must develop a discerning eye for the quality of kindness, distinguishing between authentic generosity that comes with no strings attached and strategic niceness that subtly serves the giver's need for control, validation, or a sense of superiority. The profound benefit of this discernment is the ability to engage in relationships with greater clarity, to protect your emotional energy, and to ensure that your connections are based on mutual respect rather than hidden agendas. Picture yourself being able to appreciate genuine acts of kindness fully, while also calmly recognizing and sidestepping those seemingly nice gestures that carry an undercurrent of expectation or control, thereby preserving your peace and autonomy. To begin peeling back the mask of niceness when it's used controllingly, a crucial first step is to pay close attention to whether the kind acts or offers of help are genuinely attuned to your actual needs and desires, or if they seem more about fulfilling the giver's agenda or making them feel good about themselves. Authentic kindness is responsive. It listens and seeks to understand what would truly be helpful. Strategic niceness, however, often involves imposing help or favors that you didn't ask for, don't necessarily want, or that subtly undermine your competence. For example, a colleague who constantly helps you with your tasks without being asked, perhaps redoing your work to their higher standard, might appear incredibly supportive. But if this unsolicited help consistently leaves you feeling de-skilled, dependent, or like your own efforts aren't good enough, it might be a subtle power play disguised as niceness. Or consider a family member who always insists on cooking your favorite meal when you visit, even if you've expressed a desire to try something new or contribute yourself. While seemingly thoughtful, if this pattern prevents you from ever expressing your own preferences or participating, It could be a subtle way they maintain control over the interaction and reinforce their role as the indispensable caregiver. Secondly, observe whether the nice person respects your no or your attempts to decline their help or suggestions. Genuine kindness respects boundaries and autonomy. If someone is truly being nice for your benefit, they will usually accept a polite refusal without making you feel guilty or ungrateful. However, if their niceness is a tool for control, declining their help or generosity might be met with subtle or not so subtle disapproval, disappointment, or even a manipulative sigh or comment designed to make you reconsider. For instance, you politely decline a friend's offer to drive you to an appointment because you prefer to take public transport. A genuinely kind friend would likely say, "Okay, no problem." Someone whose niceness is more about their own need to be needed or to create obligation might respond with, "Oh, are you sure? It's really no trouble for me. I was just trying to help," making you feel like you've slighted them. This inability to graciously accept a no to their kindness is a significant red flag that the niceness may come with strings attached or is serving a purpose other than your genuine well-being. A third important insight is to notice if there's an unspoken or sometimes subtly spoken expectation of reciprocity or indebtedness that follows their acts of niceness. True generosity is given freely. Strategic niceness often creates a subtle IOU, an unstated obligation that the nice person may cash in on later, often through guilt. You might find that after they've done something nice for you, they later make a request that feels difficult to refuse because you feel indebted. For example, a neighbor who goes out of their way to bring your bins in every week, unasked, might later ask you for a significant favor at an inconvenient time, and if you hesitate, they might subtly remind you of their past kindness, implying you now owe them. Or a partner who showers you with compliments and small gifts. "You're so amazing. Here's a little something I saw that made me think of you," might then expect you to overlook their inconsiderate behavior in other areas, using their niceness as a shield against legitimate complaints. If acts of kindness consistently leave you feeling a subtle pressure to comply or overlook other issues, the niceness may be a calculated investment. Furthermore, pay attention to how this nice person speaks about others, especially when those others are not present. Do they engage in subtle gossip or criticism of others while maintaining a perfectly pleasant facade to their faces? This discrepancy can be revealing. Someone who is genuinely kind and respectful tends to be consistent in their behavior. If they are capable of putting on a nice mask with others while speaking negatively about them behind their backs, it's reasonable to wonder if the niceness directed towards you is equally superficial or strategic. For instance, a colleague who is incredibly sweet and complimentary to your face, but then you overhear them making subtly disparaging remarks about you or another colleague to someone else. This indicates that their niceness is not a reflection of their true character, but a performance adapted to the audience. This lack of congruence is a sign that the niceness may not be trustworthy. Learning to see beyond the mask of niceness is not about becoming distrustful of all kindness, but about developing a healthier discernment. It's about recognizing that impact matters as much as, if not more than, stated intent. If someone's niceness consistently leaves you feeling confused, obligated, diminished, or controlled, then it is not serving you, regardless of how benevolent it appears on the surface. This awareness is the first crucial step in protecting yourself from the subtle yet powerful manipulation that can hide behind a seemingly kind smile. Once we begin to pierce this veneer and recognize that not all niceness is benign, we can start to understand one of the primary tools often wielded from behind this mask: guilt. How is guilt, often so subtle it's barely perceptible, used as silent leverage to maintain control within these nice dynamics? In our next chapter, we will explore guilt as silent leverage. We'll delve into the mechanics of how soft guilt trips operate, often launched from a platform of apparent kindness or self-sacrifice, and how they can effectively steer our behavior without a single overt demand being made. Remember to subscribe to Stealth Psychology, give this video a like, and comment with your personal opinions or suggestions for channel development. Chapter 2. Guilt as silent leverage. Have you ever found yourself agreeing to something you didn't want to do or feeling a disproportionate sense of responsibility for someone else's happiness, all because their seemingly kind words or selfless actions created an unspoken pressure that was too uncomfortable to resist? Imagine feeling a subtle but persistent weight of obligation, a feeling that you owe someone something, not because of a direct request, but because of their carefully cultivated image of niceness, their gentle sighs of disappointment, or their martyr-like endurance. This is the insidious power of guilt when it's used as silent leverage, a cornerstone of the nice but controlling pattern. The problem is that this form of guilt induction is incredibly difficult to pinpoint and confront because it's rarely tied to an explicit demand or an overt accusation. The nice controller often maintains an aura of blamelessness, appearing only to want what's best for you or to be helpful. Yet, you are left with a nagging feeling of indebtedness, a sense that you must comply or reciprocate to avoid being seen as ungrateful, selfish, or uncaring. This silent emotional maneuvering effectively controls your behavior by preying on your conscience and your desire to be a good person. The transformative solution lies in recognizing and deconstructing these soft guilt trip patterns, understanding that the guilt you feel is often intentionally, albeit subtly, manufactured by the other person to serve their need for control, validation, or to ensure their needs are prioritized. It's about learning to see guilt not as an accurate reflection of your own wrongdoing in these contexts, but as an emotional signal that a manipulative dynamic may be at play. The core idea is to become adept at identifying the subtle tactics that induce this unearned guilt, thereby neutralizing their power over you. The profound benefit of this awareness is emotional liberation, the freedom to make choices based on your own authentic desires and needs, rather than on a manufactured sense of obligation. Picture yourself being able to receive a kind gesture or hear a subtly loaded statement, and instead of immediately feeling the familiar pang of guilt, you can calmly analyze the interaction, identify the unspoken expectation, and choose a response that is aligned with your own integrity, free from coercive pressure. To begin understanding how guilt is used as silent leverage, a crucial first step is to become aware of the unsolicited superhelper pattern. This is where the nice controller consistently goes above and beyond in offering help, doing favors, or making sacrifices that you haven't asked for and may not even need. While these actions are presented as selfless, they create a powerful unspoken debt. You feel obligated to be immensely grateful, and more importantly, to reciprocate or comply with their future, often unspoken wishes. For example, a parent who constantly insists on doing all the chores for their adult child living at home, even when the child offers to help, might say things like, "Oh no, dear, you just relax. I've got it all under control. It's what mothers do." Later, when this parent expresses disappointment that the adult child wants to move out or spend a weekend with friends, the unstated message is, "After all I do for you, how can you be so inconsiderate?" The earlier niceness becomes leverage for inducing guilt about asserting independence. The unspoken contract is, "I do so much for you, therefore you owe me your compliance presence agreement." Secondly, learn to recognize the power of expressed or implied disappointment as a guilt-inducing tool. The nice controller often avoids direct anger or confrontation. Instead, they might masterfully convey their displeasure through sighs, a sad tone of voice, downcast eyes, or phrases like, "Oh, well, I was just hoping," or "It's okay, I understand you're busy," when you don't meet their unspoken expectations. This makes you feel responsible for their sadness or disappointment, and therefore guilty. For instance, you tell a friend you can't make it to their impromptu get-together. Instead of saying, "Okay, maybe next time," they might say with a sigh, "Oh, that's a shame. I was really looking forward to seeing you, but it's fine, I guess." The "it's fine" is often delivered in a way that clearly means it's not fine, leaving you feeling like you've let them down and are now the cause of their unhappiness. This tactic is incredibly effective because it positions them as the vulnerable, slightly wounded party, and you as the one who has inflicted the hurt, even if your reasons for declining were perfectly valid. A third important insight is to spot the soft martyr, or the self-sacrificer, whose niceness is constantly accompanied by subtle reminders of how much they do for others and how little they ask for themselves. They might not complain directly, but their narrative is often one of quiet suffering, overwork, or unappreciated effort, all born with a brave smile. This creates an atmosphere where you feel guilty for not recognizing their sacrifices more, for having needs of your own, or for not doing more to alleviate their supposed burdens. For example, a colleague who always stays late takes on extra tasks, sometimes unnecessarily, and then subtly mentions how tired they are or how they don't mind someone has to do it, can make other team members feel guilty for leaving on time or not volunteering for everything. Their niceness in taking on so much becomes a way to make others feel inadequate or indebted, and to gain a subtle form of moral superiority and control. If you try to address your own needs or workload in such a dynamic, you risk appearing selfish in comparison to their saintly self-sacrifice. Furthermore, pay attention to the strategic use of comparisons, often veiled in seemingly innocent observations. The nice but controlling individual might compare you, subtly or overtly, to others who are supposedly more grateful, more considerate, or more compliant, thereby inducing guilt about your own perceived shortcomings. Your sister always calls me every day to see how I am, a parent might say, not as a direct criticism, but as a way to make you feel guilty for not doing the same. Or a partner might mention how a friend's spouse is so supportive of their partner's hobbies, implying that your level of support is lacking. These comparisons are designed to make you feel like you're not meeting an unstated standard, leveraging your desire to be seen as a good son, daughter, partner, or friend, and making you feel guilty if you don't adjust your behavior to match the idealized comparison. Finally, be aware of how concern or worry can be used as a form of guilt leverage. The nice controller might express excessive worry about your choices, your well-being, or your safety in a way that subtly implies you are being reckless, inconsiderate of their feelings, or making bad decisions. Their concern, while appearing loving, actually serves to make you feel guilty for causing them anxiety, and thus pressures you to change your behavior to alleviate their worry. For example, an adult child tells their parent about an exciting travel plan. The parent responds with a litany of worries. Oh, but is that safe? What if something happens? I'll be so worried sick the whole time you're gone. While some parental concern is normal, when it's consistently used to discourage your independence or make you feel responsible for their emotional state, it becomes a soft guilt trip. You start to feel guilty for pursuing your own life because it worries them. Recognizing guilt as this silent, pervasive leverage is like finding the hidden mechanism in a complex machine. Once you see how it works, the unsolicited help creating debt, the expressed disappointment eliciting self-blame, the soft martyrdom demanding unspoken recompense, the comparisons fostering inadequacy, and the concern inhibiting autonomy, you can begin to dismantle its power over you. This awareness allows you to separate your genuine empathy from manipulated guilt, and to respond to situations with clarity rather than a conditioned sense of unearned responsibility. Now that we've explored how pervasive niceness can be a mask and how guilt can be the silent leverage, it's time to look more closely at the specific behavioral blueprints these nice but controlling individuals often employ. What are the common, often subtle tactics they use to manage your behavior and maintain their preferred dynamic, all while appearing helpful, caring, or even victimized? In our next chapter, we will delve into spotting soft control tactics. We'll identify and dissect these understated yet powerful maneuvers, from feigned helplessness to strategic gift-giving and the subtle undermining of your confidence, equipping you to see these patterns clearly and understand their manipulative intent. Remember to subscribe to Stealth Psychology, give this video a like, and comment with your personal opinions or suggestions for channel development. Chapter 3. Spotting Soft Control Tactics. What if the control exerted over you isn't through overt demands or aggressive confrontation, but through a series of almost imperceptible nudges, gentle persuasions, and strategically deployed acts of kindness that subtly shape your decisions and limit your autonomy? Imagine constantly finding yourself accommodating someone else's preferences, second-guessing your own choices, or feeling a vague sense of being managed, yet struggling to pinpoint any specific instance of overt wrongdoing because the tactics are so veiled, so soft. This is the challenging reality of dealing with individuals who employ soft control tactics, often from behind that disarming mask of niceness. The problem is that these methods are insidious. Because they lack outright aggression, they are easy to dismiss or misinterpret. You might feel confused, thinking, they're so nice, they wouldn't intentionally try to control me, or you might even blame yourself for feeling constrained, believing you are being overly sensitive or ungrateful. This internal confusion allows the soft control to continue unchecked, gradually eroding your sense of self and your ability to act in your own best interest. The controller maintains their influence, often without ever having to make a direct demand, leaving you feeling subtly manipulated, but unable to articulate exactly why. The transformative solution lies in becoming adept at recognizing these specific, soft control tactics, understanding their underlying mechanisms, and seeing them for what they are. Subtle but effective strategies for influencing and managing your behavior. It's about learning to identify the patterns that leave you feeling less than, obligated, or steered, even when the interaction is coated in sweetness. The core idea is that by naming these tactics and understanding how they operate, you can demystify them and reduce their power over you. You shift from being a confused participant in a subtle power game to an informed observer capable of protecting your own agency. The profound benefit is the ability to navigate relationships with greater clarity and confidence, preserving your autonomy and ensuring that your choices are genuinely your own. Picture yourself recognizing a soft control tactic as it unfolds, and instead of being subtly swayed or feeling inexplicably guilty, you are able to see the maneuver for what it is and choose a response that honors your own needs and boundaries. To begin spotting these soft control tactics, a crucial first one to recognize is strategic incompetence or feigned helplessness. This is where the nice but controlling person consistently acts as though they are incapable of performing certain tasks, managing responsibilities, or making decisions, thereby subtly forcing you to take over or cater to them. They might say, "Oh, I'm just so bad with technology, could you handle this for me?" Or, "I get so flustered trying to organize things, you're so much better at it." While genuine limitations exist, this tactic, when used consistently for tasks the person is capable of, becomes a way to control your time and energy and to create dependency. For example, a partner who claims they just can't cook anything edible ensures that you always have to prepare meals. Or a roommate who always forgets to pay bills on time, accompanied by apologies and expressions of their own scatterbrained nature, subtly pressures you into taking over that responsibility to avoid late fees. Their apparent helplessness, often delivered with a charmingly apologetic air, controls your actions. Secondly, learn to identify the strategic use of unsolicited advice or helpful suggestions that subtly undermine your confidence or steer your decisions. This is often presented as caring concern, but the underlying message can be that you are not capable of making good choices on your own, or that their way is inherently better. The nice controller might say, "I was just thinking, darling, perhaps you should consider their preferred option instead of what you were planning. I only want what's best for you." Or after you've made a decision, they might offer gentle feedback that makes you doubt yourself. "That's an interesting choice. I just hope it works out for you," considering implied negative consequence. For instance, you're excited about a new job offer, and a well-meaning family member says, "Oh, that sounds nice, but are you sure you'll be able to handle the commute? And the pay isn't as good as your cousin's, is it?" Their concern effectively dampens your enthusiasm and plants seeds of doubt, potentially influencing you to reconsider or to constantly seek their approval for future decisions. A third common soft control tactic is playing the soft martyr, or highlighting their own sacrifices in a way that creates obligation and makes it difficult for you to assert your own needs or desires. They don't complain loudly, but they make sure you are aware of everything they do for you or for the family, often accompanied by sighs or expressions of quiet exhaustion. This creates an atmosphere where asking for something for yourself or declining one of their subtle requests feels incredibly selfish. For example, a parent who constantly talks about how they gave up their dreams to raise their children, even when the children are now adults, can make those adult children feel perpetually indebted and guilty about pursuing their own lives fully. Or a friend who always insists on paying for coffee, saying, "Oh, it's my pleasure, don't worry about it," might later make you feel obligated to agree to a favor you'd rather not do, because, after all, they're always so generous. Their apparent selflessness becomes a tool for leverage. Furthermore, be aware of emotional contagion and the strategic display of passive emotions to influence your mood and behavior. The nice but controlling person might not express anger directly, but they can fill a room with their unspoken disappointment, sadness, or anxiety, effectively making you feel responsible for their emotional state and compelling you to try and fix it or cheer them up. If they are unhappy with a decision you've made, instead of discussing it, they might become quiet, withdrawn, and sigh frequently, making the atmosphere tense and uncomfortable until you inquire what's wrong and often change your decision to alleviate their sadness. For instance, you announce you're going on a weekend trip with friends. Your partner doesn't object, but becomes noticeably quiet and mopey. When you ask, they say, "No, it's fine, you go have fun," in a tone that clearly communicates the opposite. You then feel guilty and might even consider canceling your trip to restore their good mood, thereby giving them control over your social life through their passive emotional display. Finally, spot the tactic of selective attention or conditional approval. The nice controller may shower you with positive attention, praise, and affection when you are behaving in ways that align with their desires or expectations. However, if you deviate, express an independent thought, or assert a boundary, that warmth can subtly, or sometimes abruptly, withdraw, replaced by a cool indifference, a lack of engagement, or faint disapproval. This creates a powerful incentive to conform to their wishes to regain their positive regard. For example, a mentor at work is incredibly supportive and complimentary when you follow their advice to the letter. But when you propose an innovative idea that diverges from their approach, they become distant, less available, or subtly critical of your judgment. You quickly learn that their niceness and support are conditional upon your compliance. This is a very effective way to shape behavior over time without ever issuing a direct command. Recognizing these soft control tactics, the feigned helplessness, the undermining advice, the soft martyrdom, the emotional contagion, and the conditional approval, is like learning to read a coded language. The words and actions may seem innocuous or even kind on the surface, but the underlying message is one of control. This awareness is your key to deciphering these hidden maneuvers and protecting your autonomy. Now that we have illuminated the mask of niceness, understood guilt as silent leverage, and begun to spot the specific soft control tactics used, a critical question arises. If these patterns are so subtly damaging, why do we find ourselves repeatedly falling into them or struggling to break free? What is it within us that makes us susceptible to this particular brand of nice but controlling behavior? In our next chapter, we will explore why you keep complying. We'll delve into the common internal factors, such as people-pleasing tendencies, fear of conflict, or a high degree of empathy, that can make us more vulnerable to these soft guilt trip patterns, and how understanding these factors is crucial for lasting change. Remember to subscribe to Stealth Psychology, give this video a like, and comment with your personal opinions or suggestions for channel development. Chapter 4. Why you keep complying. Why is it that even when we intellectually recognize the mask of niceness, sense the subtle weight of guilt leverage, or spot the soft control tactics, we still find ourselves falling into familiar patterns of compliance, unable to resist the gentle yet firm pressure to conform? Imagine that frustrating internal conflict. One part of you sees the dynamic clearly and wants to assert your own needs, while another part feels an almost irresistible urge to please, to avoid conflict, or to alleviate the other person's subtly expressed disappointment. This internal tug-of-war is a common experience for those caught in the web of a nice but controlling individual. The problem isn't a lack of intelligence or insight. Rather, it often stems from deeply ingrained personal traits, past experiences, and learned relational patterns that make us particularly vulnerable to this specific brand of manipulation. We might possess a high degree of empathy, a strong desire to be seen as good or helpful, a deep-seated fear of disapproval or abandonment, or a history of being conditioned to prioritize others' emotions over our own. These very qualities, which can be wonderful in healthy contexts, become vulnerabilities when exploited by someone who uses niceness as a tool for control. The transformative solution lies in turning our gaze inward with self-compassion and curiosity to understand these personal factors that contribute to our compliance. It's about recognizing that our susceptibility isn't a flaw, but rather a set of patterns that can be understood and, with conscious effort, reshaped. The core idea is that by identifying our own internal hooks, the beliefs, fears, and tendencies that the nice but controlling person latches onto, we can begin to disarm them from the inside out. The profound benefit of this self-awareness is a significant increase in our ability to resist manipulation, not by becoming hard or cynical, but by becoming more anchored in our own self-worth and less reactive to external pressures. Picture yourself understanding your own triggers for compliance so well that when a nice controller attempts to use a familiar soft guilt trip, you can recognize not only their tactic, but also your own internal pull to give in, and then consciously choose a different, more self-honoring response. To begin understanding why you keep complying, a crucial first area to explore is the people-pleasing tendency. Many individuals who are vulnerable to nice but controlling behavior have a strong innate or learned desire to make others happy and to avoid disapproval at all costs. You might feel a deep sense of responsibility for others' feelings, believing that if someone is upset or disappointed, it's your job to fix it. This can make you highly susceptible to the soft martyr, or the person who uses expressed disappointment as leverage. For example, if a friend subtly implies they'll be all alone on their birthday if you don't attend their specific, inconveniently planned event, a strong people-pleasing urge might compel you to rearrange your entire schedule to avoid causing them that sadness, even if it means sacrificing your own prior commitments or needs. Recognizing this tendency in yourself is the first step. I notice I have a strong urge to make sure everyone around me is happy, even if it means I'm unhappy. Secondly, consider the impact of a fear of conflict or confrontation. Nice but controlling individuals often maintain their influence precisely because their methods are so indirect and non-aggressive, making it difficult to confront them without appearing to be the one who is making trouble or being difficult. If you have a strong aversion to conflict, you might find it easier to comply with their subtle demands or unspoken expectations rather than risk an uncomfortable conversation or their potential displeasure, which they might express through more niceness mixed with hurt. For instance, a family member consistently offers unsolicited, helpful advice that undermines your choices. You want to tell them to stop, but you fear they'll act deeply wounded, accuse you of being ungrateful for their care, or create an awkward family dynamic. So you continue to listen and quietly fume, effectively complying with their need to assert their opinion over yours. Acknowledging this fear, I avoid speaking up because I'm scared of how they'll react or the tension it will create is vital. A third significant factor can be an overdeveloped sense of empathy or a tendency towards codependency. Highly empathetic individuals can easily tune into and even absorb the emotions of others. While empathy is a beautiful trait, a nice but controlling person can exploit it by constantly broadcasting subtle cues of their own needs, worries, or disappointments, knowing the empathetic person will likely pick up on these and feel compelled to respond. In codependent patterns, your sense of self-worth might be overly tied to being needed by or taking care of the other person. Their feigned helplessness or strategic incompetence then becomes an invitation for you to step in and rescue them, reinforcing your role and their control. For example, your partner always seems to have a minor crisis or feel unwell just when you have plans to focus on your own interests or friends. Your empathy makes you want to care for them, and your codependent tendency might make you feel valued in that caregiver role, even as your own needs are consistently deferred. understanding if your empathy is being weaponized against you is key. Furthermore, examine any past conditioning or unresolved wounds from earlier relationships, particularly from childhood. If you grew up in an environment where love or approval was conditional, where you had to be good or compliant to receive affection, or where a caregiver was themselves nice but controlling, you may have internalized these patterns as normal. You might unconsciously seek out or tolerate similar dynamics in your adult relationships because they feel familiar, even if they are unhealthy. For instance, if you had a parent who used guilt subtly to ensure you always prioritized their needs, you might not even recognize it as manipulation when a partner does the same thing. It might just feel like how relationships work. Reflecting on your relationship history and identifying recurring themes can illuminate these ingrained vulnerabilities. I realize I've often been in relationships where I felt I had to earn approval by being exceptionally accommodating. Finally, consider the impact of low self-esteem or a weak sense of self. If you don't have a strong core belief in your own worth, your own judgment, or your right to have needs, you are much more susceptible to someone who subtly undermines you while appearing nice. Their conditional approval can become a powerful motivator, and their helpful advice can easily override your own less confident opinions. You might comply because deep down, you doubt your ability to manage without their guidance, or you fear being alone more than you dislike the control. For example, if you doubt your ability to make good financial decisions, a nice partner who offers to helpfully manage all your finances might feel like a relief initially, even if it later becomes a source of control and dependency. Building your own self-esteem is therefore a foundational part of resisting this type of manipulation. Understanding these internal reasons for compliance is not about self-blame. It is about gaining profound self-awareness, which is the wellspring of empowerment. When you know why you are vulnerable to certain tactics, you can begin to address those vulnerabilities directly, strengthening your internal resolve and making it much harder for anyone to control you, no matter how nicely they attempt it. This inner work is the key to lasting change. Once you understand the internal landscape that makes you susceptible to compliance, the path to breaking free involves not just recognizing external tactics, but also actively reshaping your internal responses and asserting your own authentic self. How do you translate this self-awareness into tangible actions that protect your autonomy and foster genuine, respectful connections? In our next chapter, we will explore reclaiming boundaries with clarity. We'll focus on the practical steps of defining, communicating, and maintaining boundaries specifically tailored to counteract the subtle pressures of the nice but controlling dynamic, all while managing the internal resistance that might arise from your own compliance patterns. Remember to subscribe to Stealth Psychology, give this video a like, and comment with your personal opinions or suggestions for channel development. Chapter 5. Reclaiming Boundaries with Clarity. What if setting a boundary wasn't about erecting a harsh wall, but about drawing a clear, respectful line in the sand with unwavering clarity, a line that defines where their influence ends and your autonomy begins, especially with someone who uses niceness as a disarming tool? Imagine feeling an internal no to a subtly coercive request or an unsolicited helpful gesture, and being able to communicate that no calmly and confidently, without excessive apology or justification, regardless of their potential disappointment or subtle guilt-tripping. This is the essence of reclaiming boundaries with clarity when dealing with a nice but controlling individual. The problem is that when control is veiled in kindness, setting boundaries can feel particularly fraught. You might worry about appearing ungrateful, hurting the feelings of someone who only means well, or disrupting the carefully maintained, albeit uncomfortable, peace. The nice controller is often adept at making your attempts to set limits seem unreasonable or unkind, leveraging your own good nature against you. This can lead to inconsistent boundary setting, where you state a limit but then back down when faced with their gentle pressure or expressions of hurt, thereby teaching them that your boundaries are negotiable. The transformative solution lies in understanding that clear, consistent boundaries are not only your right, but are absolutely essential for your emotional well-being and for fostering any semblance of genuine respect in such a dynamic. It's about recognizing that your clarity and consistency are your most powerful tools in disrupting the soft control pattern. The core idea is to approach boundary setting not as a confrontation, but as a calm, factual statement of your needs, limits, and what you will or will not accept or do, anchored in profound self-permission. The immense benefit is a gradual reclaiming of your personal space, your time, your energy, and your decision-making power. Picture yourself calmly navigating interactions, able to discern between genuine kindness and manipulative niceness, and responding to the latter with a clear, kind, but firm boundary that protects your integrity. This doesn't mean the other person will necessarily like your boundaries, but you will like yourself more for upholding them. To begin reclaiming boundaries with clarity, the first essential step is to grant yourself unambiguous permission to have boundaries, even with nice people. This internal work is foundational. Many of us, especially those with people-pleasing tendencies, feel inherently guilty or selfish for setting limits, particularly if the other person is perceived as kind or makes many sacrifices. You must consciously dismantle this belief. Affirm to yourself, I have the right to my own opinions, feelings, time, and energy. It is okay for me to say no. Setting a boundary does not make me a bad or ungrateful person, even if the other person is nice. For example, if a nice relative consistently offers unsolicited parenting advice that undermines your confidence, your internal permission slip might read, I am a capable parent, and I have the right to raise my children according to my own values without constant, unsolicited input, no matter how well-meaning it seems. This internal conviction is your anchor. Secondly, define your boundaries with specific, observable terms. Vague boundaries are difficult to communicate and easy to disregard. Instead of thinking, I wish they wouldn't be so controlling, identify the specific behaviors that feel controlling and what your preferred alternative is. For instance, if a nice colleague constantly helps by taking over your projects, your specific boundary might be, I appreciate offers of help, but I need to manage my own projects from start to finish to develop my skills. I will ask for specific input if I need it. Or if a friend uses soft guilt trips by expressing disappointment when you can't meet their spontaneous social invitations, your specific boundary might be, I need advance notice for social plans, and while I value our friendship, I cannot always be available spontaneously. I will let you know when I am free. Writing these down for yourself can help you achieve this clarity before you attempt to communicate them. A third crucial principle is to communicate your boundary clearly, calmly, and kindly, but firmly, using I statements and focusing on your need, not their perceived intent. Avoid accusing them of being controlling or manipulative, as this will likely lead to defensiveness and derail the conversation. Stick to what you need or what you will do. For example, to the advice-giving relative, Mom, I know you care a lot, and I appreciate that. Moving forward, I'd like to try and figure out these parenting challenges on my own first. If I get stuck, I'll definitely ask for your advice. This is polite, acknowledges their perceived good intent, I know you care, but clearly states your need for autonomy. If the colleague tries to take over your project, you might say, Thanks so much for offering to jump in. I really appreciate your willingness to help. For this particular project, though, I'm keen to see it through myself to get the full experience. The kindness in your delivery can make the boundary easier for a nice person to hear, but the clarity of the limit must remain. Furthermore, prepare for and manage your own discomfort and their potential reactions without backing down. This is often the hardest part. The nice but controlling person may react with surprise, hurt, an air of martyrdom. I was only trying to help, or more subtle guilt-tripping. Oh, I didn't realize I was such a bother to you. Your own ingrained patterns of compliance or fear of conflict will likely scream at you to retract the boundary or apologize. This is where your clarity and internal permission become vital. Breathe through your discomfort. Remind yourself why you set the boundary. You can acknowledge their feeling without changing your stance. I understand this might feel disappointing, and it's not my intention to hurt you. However, this is what I need for myself right now. For example, if your friend reacts to your need for advance notice for plans by saying, "I guess you're just too busy for me anymore," you can respond calmly, "It's not about being too busy for you. It's about needing to manage my schedule effectively. I still value our friendship and hope we can plan something soon when we're both free." Don't get drawn into defending the legitimacy of your need. Finally, and most importantly, be consistent in upholding your boundary. A boundary that is only sometimes enforced is not a boundary at all. It's a suggestion. Every time you allow the boundary to be crossed after you've stated it, you teach the other person that you don't really mean it. Conversely, every time you calmly and consistently uphold it, you reinforce its validity and your commitment to your own well-being. If, after telling your mother you'll ask for parenting advice when needed, she offers it unsolicited again, you might gently say, "Thanks, Mom. I'll keep that in mind." As I mentioned, I'm trying to work this out myself for now. If the helpful colleague tries to take over another task, you might say, "Thanks again for your enthusiasm. I've got this one covered, but I'll let you know if I hit a roadblock." This consistent, calm reinforcement is what makes boundaries effective over time. It gradually reshapes the dynamic by changing your participation in it. The focus is always on what you will do, not on forcing them to change. Reclaiming boundaries with clarity in the face of nice but controlling behavior is a profound act of self-respect. It is a declaration that your needs are valid, your autonomy is precious, and you are no longer willing to be subtly managed by guilt or obligation, no matter how kindly it is packaged. This process not only protects you, but also models healthier ways of interacting. As you become more adept at this, you'll notice a significant shift in your internal state, a growing sense of peace, confidence, and authenticity. With clearer boundaries beginning to take shape, and an understanding of why you've complied in the past, the next step is to address the very engine that often drives that compliance, the insidious loop of guilt. How do you effectively dismantle this cycle so that their subtle manipulations no longer trigger that automatic sense of unearned responsibility? In our next chapter, we will delve into breaking the guilt loop. We'll explore practical strategies to interrupt the cycle of induced guilt and compulsive compliance, helping you to respond with conscious choice rather than conditioned reaction, and truly freeing your mind from the grip of soft control. Remember to subscribe to Stealth Psychology, give this video a like, and comment with your personal opinions or suggestions for channel development. Chapter 6. Breaking the Guilt Loop. What if you could encounter a subtle guilt trip, that familiar gentle pressure from a nice but controlling person, and instead of being pulled into the usual vortex of self-blame and anxious compliance, you could observe it, understand its mechanics, and consciously choose to step outside its influence, your inner peace intact. Imagine the profound freedom of no longer being a puppet to unearned guilt, where your actions are driven by your own authentic choices rather than a manufactured sense of obligation. This is the ultimate goal of breaking the guilt loop, a liberating process that allows you to reclaim your emotional sovereignty from those who use niceness as a conduit for soft control. The problem is that guilt, especially when induced subtly by someone perceived as kind or self-sacrificing, can create a powerful and often unconscious feedback loop. Their nice gesture or expression of disappointment triggers your ingrained desire to be good or to avoid conflict. You comply to alleviate the discomfort of the guilt. They receive validation that their tactic works, and the pattern is reinforced, making you more susceptible next time. This cycle can leave you feeling perpetually indebted, emotionally drained, and like you're constantly failing to meet unspoken expectations, despite your best efforts to be considerate. The transformative solution lies in developing the awareness and skills to consciously interrupt this guilt-compliance cycle at multiple points. It's about understanding that the guilt you feel in these situations is often a conditioned emotional response, not an accurate reflection of any actual wrongdoing on your part. The core idea is to become an active agent in your emotional processing, rather than a passive reactor to externally induced guilt. By learning to identify the onset of the guilt, question its validity, and choose a different response to the trigger, you effectively dismantle the loop's power. The immense benefit of this is not just relief from the immediate pressure of guilt, but a lasting shift in your relational dynamics, where you are no longer easily manipulated by these subtle emotional levers. Picture yourself calmly navigating situations that used to send you into a spiral of guilt, now able to respond with clarity, confidence, and genuine self-direction, preserving your energy and your integrity. To begin breaking the guilt loop, the first essential step is to practice immediate mindful recognition of the guilt trigger and the onset of the feeling itself. When you are interacting with a nice but controlling person, and they say or do something that typically makes you feel obligated or bad, e.g., they sigh with disappointment, offer unsolicited selfless help, subtly compare you to someone more considerate, try to catch that first flicker of guilt or discomfort as it arises. Instead of immediately being swept away by it, pause internally and label the experience. That comment about how much they've sacrificed is a guilt trigger for me. I'm starting to feel that familiar sense of obligation. Or they just offered to do that big favor I didn't ask for, and now I'm feeling that pressure to say yes to whatever they ask next. This simple act of noticing and naming creates a crucial moment of awareness, a space between the trigger and your usual automatic reaction. For example, your parent says, "Don't worry about me being all alone for my birthday. You go have fun on your trip." You feel the guilt. You notice, that was a guilt-inducing statement. I feel guilty. Once you've recognized the trigger and the initial feeling, the second step is to critically examine the validity of the guilt. Ask yourself, have I actually done something wrong here, according to my own values and a reasonable assessment of the situation? Or is this guilt being manufactured or amplified by the other person's words or actions? Am I responsible for their feelings or for solving their problems in this specific instance? Often, with soft guilt trips, there is no actual transgression on your part. The nice controller is leveraging your good nature. For instance, if a colleague who frequently takes overly long lunch breaks sighs and says, "I guess I'll have to stay late again to finish this, since everyone else is leaving on time," and you feel guilty for not offering to stay and help them, question that guilt. Did you cause them to take long breaks? Is their workload genuinely unmanageable due to team issues or due to their own time management? Are you actually responsible for their overtime? More often than not, you'll find the guilt is unearned. Remind yourself, their disappointment, stress, unhappiness in this situation is not my fault or my responsibility to fix. A third powerful technique is to delay your response when you feel pressured by guilt. The guilt loop often thrives on immediate compliance. When you feel that urge to quickly apologize, agree, or offer to fix things just to alleviate the discomfort of the guilt, consciously choose to pause. Give yourself time to process the situation and your feelings. You can say something non-committal like, "Let me think about that," or "I need a moment," or simply not respond immediately if the pressure is unspoken. This delay breaks the immediacy of the trigger reaction cycle and gives your rational mind a chance to catch up with your emotional response. For example, a friend makes a last-minute request for a significant favor, subtly implying that a good friend would drop everything. You feel a surge of guilt and the urge to say yes instantly. Instead, you pause and say, "I need to check my schedule and a few things first. Can I get back to you in an hour?" During that hour, you can assess the request, your own needs, and the validity of the guilt, allowing you to make a more conscious choice rather than a guilt-driven one. Furthermore, once you've paused and questioned the guilt, practice responding based on your own needs, values, and previously defined boundaries, rather than reacting to the guilt itself. This is where you actively choose a different path in the loop. This might mean politely declining a request, reaffirming a boundary, or simply not taking on the emotional burden they are trying to offload. For example, the parent who tried to guilt you about being alone on their birthday for your trip. After recognizing the guilt and its lack of true validity, you've made other plans to celebrate with them. You're entitled to a trip. You respond kindly but firmly, "I'm really looking forward to celebrating your birthday with you when I get back, as we planned. I hope you can still have a pleasant day on your actual birthday. You acknowledge their unspoken feeling without taking the bait or changing your plans. Or to the colleague implying you should stay late. I hope you managed to get it all done. I have to leave now as planned. See you tomorrow. This response is polite but doesn't absorb their projected responsibility. Finally and crucially, when you successfully resist complying due to guilt, consciously manage any lingering discomfort or backlash guilt with self-compassion and self-affirmation. The nice but controlling person may escalate their subtle tactics if their initial guilt trip doesn't work. Perhaps more pronounced sighs, a sadder demeanor, or even a gentle accusation like, "I'm surprised you're not more understanding." Your own internal guilt-conditioned voice might also pipe up, telling you you're being mean or selfish. This is a critical moment to stand firm internally. Remind yourself, I am not responsible for their emotional reaction to my healthy choices. It is okay for me to prioritize my needs. This discomfort is temporary and a sign I am breaking an old pattern. Engage in self-soothing activities. Acknowledge your courage. For example, after declining to host a large family gathering that a nice relative was subtly pressuring you into, "Oh, it would just be so lovely at your beautiful house. Everyone loves it there. But I guess it's a lot to ask," and they express their disappointment, you might feel a wave of guilt. Instead of calling back and offering to do it, you go for a walk, call a supportive friend who knows the dynamic, and affirm to yourself, "I made the right decision for my own capacity and well-being." It's okay for them to be disappointed. I don't have to fix it. Each time you successfully navigate this, the guilt loop weakens significantly. Breaking the guilt loop is a profound act of reclaiming your mental and emotional freedom. It is the culmination of unmasking niceness, understanding silent leverage, spotting soft control tactics, knowing your own compliance triggers, and setting clear boundaries. It is where you transition from being subtly managed by others' kindness to being confidently guided by your own inner truth and values. This isn't about becoming immune to all guilt. Healthy guilt for genuine wrongdoing is an important moral compass. It's about becoming immune to manipulative, unearned guilt. This mastery allows you to engage in relationships with a newfound sense of peace, authenticity, and self-possession, knowing that your choices are truly your own, offered freely from a place of genuine care, not from a place of coerced obligation. The nice but controlling pattern loses its power when you refuse to play your assigned role in its script, and instead choose to write your own. This journey of unmasking the nice but controlling dynamic, from recognizing the subtle deceptions and the silent leverage of guilt, to understanding our own compliance patterns, and then forging the strength to set clear boundaries and finally break the insidious guilt loop, has been about empowering you to reclaim your authentic self. It's about cultivating a discernment that allows you to appreciate genuine kindness while protecting yourself from its manipulative imitation. The power to navigate relationships with clarity, to honor your own needs without unearned guilt, and to live free from the subtle chains of soft control is not just a possibility, but a capacity you can develop and strengthen. The insights gained are tools to build a life where your interactions are based on mutual respect, true empathy, and the joyful expression of your own validated inner voice. You are now equipped to see behind the mask, to understand the leverage, and to choose freedom. Throughout our exploration of the nice but controlling pattern, we've journeyed from unveiling the deceptive mask of niceness and understanding how guilt is used as silent leverage, to spotting specific soft control tactics and examining the internal reasons for our compliance. Most importantly, we've focused on actionable strategies for reclaiming boundaries with clarity and finally breaking the insidious guilt loop that keeps us ensnared. The goal has been to empower you with awareness and tools so you can navigate your relationships with greater confidence, protect your emotional well-being, and foster connections that are genuinely supportive rather than subtly coercive. Thank you for investing your time with us at Stealth Psychology. We sincerely hope this knowledge serves you in building a life of authentic self-direction and peace. Please show your support by liking this video, sharing your thoughts or experiences in the comments below, and subscribing for more content dedicated to your personal growth and emotional strength.